In this lesson, we're going to be identifying rate situations using rate tables. However, before we get into rates, you need to know what ratios are. Ratios are actually very simple. They're just a comparison of two quantities. So, for example, if you look on the top left, you can see that we could compare maybe the squares to the blue circles. So that would be a ratio of 3 to 6. You could also write it as 3 to 6 this way with a colon, or you can write 3 to 6 this way, so it almost looks like a fraction. But all of these are ratios that compare squares to circles. You could even change it around and make it circles to squares if you wanted. So I'll switch it to circles to squares. That means we're now going to have a ratio of 6 to 3, or 6 to 3, or again 6 to 3. If you look at the bottom, we can write ratios for the apples. We can do maybe green to red, so that would be 3 green to 4 red, or 3 to 4, or 3 to 4. Again, we could switch it around if we wanted to. We could make it, instead of green to red, we could make it red to green, so that would be 4 to 3, or 4 to 3, or 4 to 3. Now in the top right you can see basically a ratio that's kind of already done for you. Here they're comparing the 6 blue squares to the 2 yellow squares. So that's a ratio of 6 to 2, or of course 6 to 2, or 6 to 2. However, if you look at the top, you can see that they've actually simplified that ratio. That means they kind of like simplifying fractions. They broke it down as far as they could. 6 to 2 is the same as 3 to 1 because there are 3 blue squares for every single 1 yellow square, and you can see that in the rows. Okay, now take a look at workbook page 9. Here it says Noreen started to save money. Every day she put 3 $1 coins into her duck bank. Write how much money she had each day. Now this is actually an example of a rate situation. A rate is just like a ratio. You're comparing two things, but in this case you're talking about different units. On the last slide we were comparing, apples to apples and squares to squares. But here we're talking about two completely different things. So we are talking about a rate. In this case, it is days and money. She is putting in $3 every day. So we're talking about how many dollars and how many days that she's saving. Two completely different numbers, two completely different units. So let's start filling in our table. Noreen begins with an empty bank, obviously, so she starts with $0. And now day 1 comes along. She's got $3 that she puts in her bank, which means she's got $3 in her bank at the end of day 1. Day 2, okay, she's going to deposit another $3, which means she is now up to $6 in her bank on day 2. On day 3, all right, another $3 is being deposited into her duck bank, and now we're up to $9 in her bank. So here we have this rate situation. We have day 1 where $3 was in there. Then we have day 2, now we have $6 in there. Day 3, now we have $9 in there. And you can see we can actually make a table showing these different rates, 1 to 3, 2 to 6, 3 to 9. Now, I'll let you finish the table on your own, and these questions aren't in your workbook, but there's similar ones in there. How much would she have saved on day 9? Think about it. You could make a table, I guess. You could keep thinking about, okay, day 1 is $3, day 2, $6, day 3, $9, and you could keep counting that way. Or you might find it easier just to multiply. You know that she is depositing $3 every day. So depending on what day it is, you can just multiply that by your $3 and you'll see how much money she will have had. So if we're talking about day 9, we're talking about $3 times 9. Or maybe day 11. What if it were 11 days of saving $3? Well, that means she would have $33 by the 11th day. You could use multiplication rather than listing it all out. Now on workbook page 10, you can actually see a rate table. This probably looks very familiar to you because I just was drawing something like this 2 slides ago. Here we have a rate table that shows 2 different units. We're talking about the days and we're talking about the dollars. So obviously day 1 we have $3. By day 2 now we're up to 6. By day 3, $9. And you could finish filling in this table, of course. Day 4, well, now we'd have 12. Day 5, okay, now we'd have 15. Day 6, $18. Day 7, $21. And day 8, now we're up to $24. Every time, as the days increase, our dollars are increasing by 3. We're adding 3 every day. $3 are being deposited every day. So what did we write in between each row? Well, what we wrote was plus 3. We were adding 3 in between every row to show that increase of $3 every day. What does that number between each row show? It shows the constant increase of $3 per day. Now I just used a really important word there, and that word is constant. Constant means it's never going to change. It's always going to stay the same. And in this case, we have a constant rate. Our constant rate is that every day Noreen is depositing $3. So it's staying the same. Every day $3 are being deposited into that duck bank. Now, your rate tables, you will notice, are actually basically like columns from your multiplication table. For that rate table for Noreen's duck bank, well, we have this column here. We have our ones column. This was for the days. And then we also had the threes column. This was for the amount of money. So day 1, $3. Day 2, $6. Day 3, $9, and so on and so forth. So in a rate table, you're going to see 2 things. You're going to see 2 columns that look like they're right out of a multiplication table. And you're also going to see that constant increase, that constant rate. Now, starting on page 10 and going on to page 11, you're going to see a variety of tables. And you need to determine whether they're rate tables or not. They're going to just show you 4 different ways that Noreen could have saved money. You have to tell me whether they really are rate tables or not. So let's see. Looking at this table in number 12, we have our column here for our days, and then we've got a column here for dollars. And if you look to the right-hand side, you can see that there is an increase of $2 every single day. It's constant, a constant rate. So that means by day 2, we're up to $4, by day 3, 6, and so on and so forth. So in this case, I would say yes, this is a rate table. And let's see, if I want to explain it, I can say, well, it shows a constant increase of $2 per day. All right, here are your takeaways for this lesson. First, a ratio. Remember, a ratio is just a comparison of 2 quantities. You're just comparing 2 things and writing the numbers for it. 6 to 3, 3 to 6, whatever it is. A rate is a special kind of ratio that compares 2 quantities but of different units. So Instead of apples to apples and squares to squares, in this case we were talking about days and dollars. Constant, again, a situation that does not change. A rate table is a 2-column table that shows the number of units in the first column, which remember our first column was the days, and then the value associated with each given number of units in the second column. So depending on what day was in the first column, that helped us to determine how much money we had in the second column. And something you definitely want to remember, rate tables have to contain 2 columns from the multiplication table, and they must show a constant increase. So make sure you write all of these things down in your notebook.